While we talk about recovery in the economy and month on month, we see improved statistics. Your quarterly GDP numbers are also better than was expected, even though they're in the negative territory. But look at things like GST collection, look at things like use of electricity consumption, the sale of cars, sale of real estate, etc. So wherever you look, there seems to be positive news on the economic front, except one indicator, which is truly, in a sense, the most important one, and that's employment. Now, we've lost about 14 million jobs in December alone, as per the CMIE data. They put out a weekly jobs report. To speak to us on this data and the overall outlook for employment, I'm joined now by Mahesh Vyas, CEO and MD of CMIE. Mahesh, welcome to the show and thank you for speaking with us. Can you tell us what the trends have been in the last quarter? Has there been any improvement in employment?
There has been a lot of recovery compared to where we were in the April-June quarter. There was a much smaller recovery in the second quarter as well. There has been no recovery in the October, November, December quarter. So employment generation, and if you look at that metric, and that's what I'm talking about currently, then there has actually been a deterioration in employment generation in this quarter. So we saw employment which dropped from an average of about 405 million in 2019-20, dropped to around 280 in April, then it came back and it peaked in September. So that's when it touched its max. I think it was around 398 million. And after the 398 million, it has been sliding very gradually, but it's very annoying to not see that number rise again from the 398 number that we reached. It's down to 389 in December. So that's a disappointment. We are not seeing any improvement in employment. This is partly explained by the fact that a lot of the jobs in the agriculture sector have kind of rolled back. So the Kharif season is over, Rabi sowing is largely over in many parts of the country, and they have released people over there. That seems to have contributed to the December number falling substantially. But the fall in other numbers seems to be hitting the economy from all sides.
So why do you think that's happening? Because, like I pointed out in my opening remarks, while the economy seems to be on recovery mode, why are jobs not recovering at the same pace as the rest of the economy?
Well, there are clearly some disconnects over here. So like we see the disconnect between the stock market booming when the economy is not exactly doing well, doing quite badly. So there is a disconnect between the stock market and the performance of the economy, even the performance of the corporate sector still recently. But I think what matters is that employment needs to grow and household incomes need to grow. If the economy is booming without this happening, then it is a no-brainer that this growth that we are seeing is going to cause huge income inequalities. It's going to increase income inequalities in a very big way. That's the first point I can make in response to your question. The second point is that there are structural changes which are happening. So, there was a V-shaped recovery. So from April through May and June, there was a V-shaped recovery for sure. There's no doubt about it. And many of those things have sustained themselves. For example, electricity generation, to some extent GST collections, and a few other indicators have, and even automobile sales have seen very robust increases. But the economy as a whole consists of many more things. It consists of airlines. It consists of restaurants. It consists of the education sector. It consists of many other sectors that are not doing well. Many of these are actually employment intensive. And these sectors are also adding up to the total pie, which is not showing up in the GDP numbers because the GDP numbers are largely based on the organized sector. In the organized sector, we have seen corporate profits skyrocket. In the second quarter, they saw profits that they have never seen in the past. They see the listed companies' profits in absolute terms. They have never seen that kind of profits. And those profits show up in GDP because factor incomes includes profits, wages, rents, and interest. And of this, wages and profits are the biggest. Profits really grew and therefore the GDP grew, but employment did not grow, and therefore wages did not grow. So there is a disconnect. There is a disconnect between the stock market and the corporate sector as a whole, not just listed companies. And there's a disconnect between that segment, which is the organized sector, and the rest of the economy.
Well, eventually, wouldn't an improvement in corporate sector performances lead to the creation of more formal sector employment as they continue to expand? And which sections, in your view, are the most vulnerable right now? Is it skilled workers, unskilled workers, formal sector, informal sector?
So let me answer you in two parts. The first thing is that the corporate sector showed no inclination to hire people when they were making massive profits. So there was really no justification for them to slash wages, lay off people because they were making massive profits. So even if their top line was shrinking, and it was actually shrinking, it did shrink substantially in the second quarter. In spite of that, they made huge profits. And therefore, there was no justification for them to cut wages or cut employment. But they did do so. So there is a problem over here that profits do not necessarily lead to employment generation, tells us the numbers from September. So it's something else. They're required to see their top line grow. And unless they don't see top line grow and they need to hire more people, and profits are not only or largely based on terms of trade that moved in their favor, only then will the employment and wages grow. So that is first part of the answer I'd like to give. The second part is that employment, will it grow in the formal sector or the informal sector? I think it should be growing in the formal sector as corporates are doing well and MSMEs are not doing very well. MSMEs are doing very badly and larger companies can survive these storms, these shocks that the economy goes through. But what has happened is that the government has allowed things like contract labor, fixed term employment, which are not exactly good quality jobs and not exactly formal kind of jobs. So although the corporate sector is going to grow much better, its propensity to provide good quality jobs, non-contractual but more permanent quality jobs, is a little less incentivized. So I think there are some corrections we need to make to motivate companies, given that they will grow and take over the market share of the MSMEs. They need to provide better quality jobs and not merely contractual or fixed term employment jobs. We require those kinds of employments as well, surely. But I think that should not become the norm.
If I were to ask you to assess the overall number of jobs that have been lost since the 24th of March last year, what would you say? I mean, there are several numbers doing the rounds. One number is 80 million jobs that have been lost, and that's something Raghuram Rajan said in an interview to us last week. Is the number truly that high?
It was that deep. In April, we lost 122 million jobs. And since most of those jobs were in the unorganized sector, in informal sectors, or self-employed people, all of them came back. Whereas the salaried employees who had better quality jobs, they lost consistently and their jobs did not come back as enthusiastically. The number as of December 2020, compared to 2019-20 as a whole, is a loss of the order of 15 million jobs, 1-5. So it's not 80 million now for sure. I think Raghuram Rajan's numbers could be dated. That did happen earlier. But the latest numbers we have as of December 2020, our estimate is actually 14.7 million jobs lost.
So, sort of varying inputs coming in on the jobs front. For example, when we speak to those in the online job space, like a Naukri or a Monster or LinkedIn, etc., and the reports that they put out, they're reporting a marked improvement. They're saying that jobs which are out there about maybe 5-6% down compared to last year this time. Are there then, should we assume, jobs available in some categories and this is not a secular trend of unemployment?
There certainly is an increase in employment in some sectors. There's no doubt about that. So if you ask the company, uh, on a net basis, are you hiring now? The answer most likely is going to be a yes. Or they will have plans to do that by April or so. Because all the economy as a whole has cut off jobs so deeply that this is the time for them to come back to say that we are going to hire people. But they're also laying off people or they're reducing their workforce more than they are hiring people. So we continuously keep hiring people, and there are people that are being laid off. Now it is easier to lay off people during these times. So they get rid of people they don't want, sections they don't want, people who are not exactly efficient in working. So on a net basis, we don't see much increase. So there's another element in this, that you need to look at the total workforce, because there are new young people who are joining the labor force. So there are 18 something, 20 something, 25 something who is entering the labor force now. Naukri may not see them. When they come in, they are also to be counted as people wanting to look for jobs. So these people can only be trapped in your measurement if you do a comprehensive household survey. So a household survey goes to everyone, independent of whether the person is logged into Naukri or anything else or not. So that tells us that there is an increase in employment for sure, but there's also a reduction in employment. And given that there are more people coming into the labor market, on a net basis, we are going negative still.
What impact will the vaccination rollout have? We've been talking about the impact of vaccine on the economy and how it could be a game changer. Do you think it will be a game changer for jobs and employment as well?
I think the vaccine is going to be a big game changer. That's the only way in which we will be able to get back to normal life. That's the only way in which employment will come back to full strength. We'll not be talking about how many jobs are lost, but we will talk hopefully in terms of how many jobs are getting added. So vaccines are the only way in which we can come out of the pandemic syndrome and all troubles associated with it. I hope that we take sufficient efforts to roll out that efficiently, send the message out correctly, build confidence in the vaccines, ensure that people are well taken care of. And the faster we do it, the better we do it, the higher are the chances that the economy will come back to its original speed.
Well, let's hope for the best. That's one reason why the vaccination rollout has to be quick, safe, and universal. At the very least, because it will bring back jobs and bring back employment, and that is so crucial to reduce the income inequality gap.